Congratulations! You've unlocked All Apologies, a show about apology tours and demanding satisfaction. I'm your host, Trucker Andy, and with me this week, a very special guest I'm thrilled to welcome from Worst of the Best and Rocky and Rambo series. It's Ryan Rebalkin, everybody. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Andy. Thank you so much for having me on. It really is a pleasure and honor to be on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much. And I wanted to maybe give you a chance at the top of the show. I know hopefully people that are watching this saw last week's episode, and I featured me appearing on your show where we talked about Clutch. But if for anybody that maybe didn't catch that, do you want to explain, plug your shows and explain what they're about?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, of course, if you're listening to the Old Apologies podcast, chances are you're probably not here for me, but maybe a couple of my listeners are going to pop over, and I hope they do, to check out the format of this show. That's the whole goal of this, I think. So I'm going to encourage my listeners to come over here as well. And Andy, you were very gracious and kind to actually just put our recording for my show on your feed just to advertise the show. And some of your listeners might have been like, who the hell, what's going on here? I don't know.
It was laziness, right? I was like, oh, I don't have to do an episode this week. I'll just do Ryan's show.
And I would like to first apologize to all of your listeners that they were blindsided by my presence on the feed. So let me apologize for that. And I also want to apologize to, I think the guy's name is Mike, in the comment section of your Instagram. He's like, I can't believe this guy mentioned Saint Anger in this album in the same sentence. And I'm like, no, it was just literally one snare sound. Like literally half a second of a sound sounded like the same snare sound from Saint Anger. But anyways, we made up, and he's actually listening to some back catalog episodes of the Worst of the Best podcast. So thanks to everyone who checks out the show of the Worst of the Best podcast. I appreciate it.
You have to know that Saint Anger is a maligned album. Like, people have strong opinions about that.
Very strong. I'll say this. I'm a huge Metallica fan, the same way you're probably a Clutch fan. I've been a Metallica fan for almost 40 years since I was a kid, and I've been listening to them even before the Black Album. I'm one of those guys. So I've been listening to them for a long time. And of course, as a fan, you know when songs suck and when songs are great. That's why we do the Worst of the Best podcast, because even your favorite things, whether it's music, artists, they're going to have something that, despite them being the best, there's going to be something that's the worst of that best. And Saint Anger, though it was much maligned, and is rightfully so a much maligned album, over the years it has grown in the fandom. And I will say this, every time they play a Saint Anger song at a concert, it's a hidden gem, and the crowd pops off for it. To use a wrestling term, the crowd pops for it. And Kirk Hammett adds a guitar solo to the live songs that weren't there in the studio. And people have often said, and rightfully so, I wish they would do a whole Saint Anger live album recording, because they do translate very well live with the Kirk Hammett solos. They recognize that. And James always says, from our worst or our most hated album, here's a song, and the crowd laughs and cheers and they love it. So over time, it's much loved now.
That's interesting to me. Let's do it. Let's turn it on its head. What is the best song off the worst album, Saint Anger?
Oh boy, that's good. I love Sweet Amber. That's the one that comes to my mind.
All right, I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna apologize to you, because we talked a little. You said you were catching up on my show, and then but behind the scenes, you're like, did you even listen to any of the show? I was like, I listened to like half of one episode, but I have been catching up on it, and I was listening to the sleep behavior one. I'm doing it the other way. I'm starting from the most recent and going backwards. But
you're gonna see how the show degrades over time. That's
yeah, right. But I also listened to the celebrity deaths one, and I have to throw my hat in the ring for
please.
Pee Wee Herman was maybe the most impactful death of 2023 for me. That was a real bummer for me.
That's our favorite. So again, for our listeners, what are you guys talking about celebrity deaths? Yeah. So at the end of each year, we will compile the top celebrities that passed away, and then we pick the worst one, the one that kind of affected us the most, so the one that hurt the most personally, and then we pick whoever we think is the worst. Like, we're kind of glad they're dead, like the worst celebrity.
Julian Sands was the most wild one to me. That in that list, I didn't realize he had died in the way that he died. And no spoilers, go listen to the episode if you don't know. But
yeah, sure.
If you didn't know Julian Sands was dead, he went out rough. Okay, but we're not here to talk about celebrity deaths. We're here to talk about celebrity scandals. And this week, Ryan wanted to do Mel Gibson, and I thought it was a brilliant pick. And lately, Ryan, the show has just turned into, we're going to talk about these big embarrassing situations with bigger celebrities instead of like YouTubers that nobody knows. We're just kind of drilling down on these and mega stars and just finding the apologies because they're inevitably in there. And we definitely found them with this Mel Gibson thing.
Before you start with Mel, I wanted to echo Lucy when she said that people do want to hear about the YouTubers. I'm one of those people. So believe it or not, I know you look at the numbers. I understand you look at numbers on your podcast. We all do. Us little peon podcasters look at our numbers, and we try to say what episodes are hitting. Like at my music episodes, they actually have a higher number count than some of the other ones. Celebrity ones have a higher count than some of the other ones. But that being said, I will say I enjoy the YouTuber world ones. I think they're fascinating because it's the new celebrity to some degree. Are these YouTubers with millions of followers? So don't sleep on them, because some of their scandals are quite interesting and quite fantastic to read and to listen to and hear their apologies, because they come from the generation that they apologize so terribly and so graciously. Like, it's fun to listen to their apologies. And one I would recommend to you to do is Shane Dawson.
I'm aware that's on the list.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
And I won't forsake YouTuber apologies, but you're right. You look at the analytics, and it's just like, well, maybe these are going to take a backseat to Mel Gibson, and they definitely will. But I'll check out the Shane content. I know we have a couple other suggestions from the YouTube realm that we're definitely going to get around to. But in the meantime, I don't think anybody doesn't really know about Mel Gibson's fall from grace. But if you don't, back in 2006, that's when things really started deteriorating for Mel Gibson. And it could be argued that it's all because of the 2004 release of Passion of the Christ, because he was kind of put on a watch list from people that keep an eye on that kind of thing. Not me. I think we talked about this. I went to Catholic school for 10 years. So I'm kind of done with all of that. I did not see Passion of the Christ. I didn't want to. It looked awful. What's your awareness of Passion of the Christ, Ryan?
Well, I was also raised extremely religious. Are
you still?
No.
Okay. I just want to get on the same page before we start bashing religions, which whatever they may be.
Well, I'm not religious at all. And in fact, that obviously that topic or that, theology will definitely come up in this discussion. So, but I was raised very strict Mormon, actually.
Oh, interesting.
And it was very interesting. I mean, I had a great childhood, great youth programs, all that stuff. But I was just, long story short, when I got into my mid-30s, so late, it was just after my divorce, and my life shattered and my worldview shattered. And I was like, I got to reinvestigate everything. And I did. I just reinvestigated everything. Like, how did I get to this point in my life? And a large part of it was kind of my upbringing and my worldview. And I changed my worldview, started discovering who I was. And that included just being out of any religion, and much happier place now. I'm remarried, all that good stuff. But that being said, I just, religion, I think it causes a few problems in the world. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. And I've been asserting this for a while, that a lot of church things back then, people were so into. I mean, this will offend a lot of people that are very religious, but it put so much emphasis on it back then because there wasn't television. People had nothing better to do. People would wait for the mail and go to church, and sit around the campfire. And now we have cars and video games and the internet, and it's a different way to occupy your time, as opposed to some person insisting that their make-em-ups are better than another person's make-em-ups. I don't know. It's just kind of...
No, I agree. Religion is a great way of explaining. It's called the God gap. You probably have heard that term before. So religion has the ability, and a very good ability, to fill in the gaps that we can't explain. For example, they used to think thunder was the god of Thor. Then we found out, no, it was just a weather thing. Like, it's weather. Right. Like, we can actually measure when we'll get those storms on our apps, on our weather apps. Yeah. So religion is basically designed to answer the questions we don't have answers to, and I understand it can bring comfort to people, and I hate when people say I respect that. I understand what it does for people. I was a part of it for 3.5 decades, and I'm aware of what it does to people, but I'm also aware, I forget the quote, but it's something like, religion, what is it, religion makes good people or bad people good, but it can also make good people bad. And I think religion gives you the license to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do if you weren't religious. Like, no one's ever declared war in the name of science or humanitarianism, I don't think.
This is very insightful. I would never get this kind of insight from the Joe Sixpack. So I'm glad you're here for this episode. But
why do you call him Sixpack? Is it because of his incredible abs or his drinking habits?
More the drinking habits.
Oh, okay.
No, it's more. These are the opinions of the everyman, the average Joe. Joe Sixpack is a generalization for people that are just, NPCs, and that's why I sort of started out as Andy Q Public. It's like John Q Public, Public and Joe Sixpack. These are just the everyman opinions, the uninformed, people that, like you said, it's kind of like a shortcut to thinking when you just let your pastor explain what thunder is, or all these people that run to, oh, I saw the Matrix. Everything must be a simulation because the Matrix explained it all to me and I don't have to do any research if I just go along with that. And I think a lot of people these days use things that they saw in the movies as a shortcut to explaining whatever deep state politics and shit they don't know anything about, So I just kind of like have that. It's a veil that I keep trying to like see through. But I don't like this. Is, like I said, I'm not doing a lot of homework. I just know that people are lying to me all the time.
I just believe this is my religion, and we'll move on, of course, to Mel and his thoughts. But I just believe just be nice to people. I know it's not pick up your litter. If you're just nice to people, and it's weird how the world would just be maybe a better place. Just be nice. Is that weird? You can still be dumb or stupid or make poor choices, but just don't be an a-hole. And I think that at the end of the day, if everyone just was just kinder, a little bit nicer, I know that sounds corny, but I don't know. I'm just so tired of asshole behavior. Excuse my friend.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I, not to, long story short, I just thought that was worth mentioning because
of course, we're
going to get to some of these clips that feature his experience making that film and how it informed some of his
let's talk about, this is huge. The Mel Gibson of The Passion, like you asked me at the beginning, we kind of strayed, was I haven't seen it either. I have no interest in seeing somebody getting tortured on screen. I'm aware of the Christ story, of course, very aware of it. And it's a little much. I've seen a couple clips and I've heard what is shown. Like I've researched what is shown. I'm not interested in watching, flesh get ripped off his backs. I'm not interested in seeing that. I actually was surprised how popular, but how successful box office this film was. It was huge.
Yeah, it was. And there's a clip that comes up later where he sort of brings it up, and I know what those numbers are. So we'll get into how successful the movie was. So that came out in 2004. And that got on a lot of maybe let's say the Anti-Defamation League started paying attention to Mel Gibson in 2004 based on The Passion, and then cut to 2006. Maybe people have their eyes on him, and now he's kind of faded into the background as maybe a director producer based on the success of The Passion. Now he's doing Apocalypto. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah, I did see that one. Are you okay? Should we talk about it, or do you want to, before all this went down in 2004 and 6? Do you have a fandom of Mel? Did you see the Lethal Weapons, Braveheart, all that? Okay.
100. I've seen all of the Lethal Weapons multiple times. Mad Max.
Me too.
You know what? Maverick is beloved by me.
Yeah, I love Maverick. I
want to be on a riverboat out casino so bad, just based on Maverick alone. And Yeah, he was a marquee name back then. And so it was like Tom Cruise and Eddie Murphy and Mel Gibson. You couldn't miss if you put these bankable guys in your movies, and Mel Gibson was one of those names.
I see them all. I even saw What Women Want in the theaters. Like I was a Mel guy, you know, and I truly enjoy his films, and it gets tricky because at what point, Andy, do you separate the art from the behavior of the artist? Because I'm sure there's music artists you enjoy, comedians you might enjoy. Are their jokes not fun anymore? Like how does that work?
I love Gary Glitter's music. But yeah, you know, you have to separate the art from the art. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But I know what you're saying, and we're gonna.
Okay.
I not to, you know, bury the lead, but I did turn my back on Mel Gibson.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I've only recently sort of been letting him worm his way back into me a lot, like me begrudgingly watching Boss Level, even though he's in it, but I want to see Machete Kills, you know, I want to see Boss Level. So even though he's in it, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm not going to watch it just because of Mel Gibson's off-screen antics. But for a while, I did feel that way.
Sure. It's understandable.
So Apocalypto is coming out in 2006, and right around the same time, mainly because no studio wanted to work with Mel Gibson. He's basically making indie films. Granted, like he has the clout to finance all of this, but
sure,
you know, why is, you know, Martin Riggs making indie films? It's because, you know, in 2006, this recording with his then girlfriend came out. Let's hear this clip. Scandal 1, Ed.
I don't walk around in tight clothes. I stay at home for most of the time.
Public, and it's a embarrassment to me. You look like a on heat. And if you get raped by a pack, it's your fault. All right? Because you provoked it. You are provocatively dressed all the time with your fake boobs. You feel you have to show off in tight outfits and tight pants so that you see your from behind. And that green thing today was enough. That's provocative. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I you know, it's funny. I'm sure Mel probably enjoyed the fake boobs, at least privately.
Right. Yeah. So, oh God, what's her name? Gina. Ed, look it up. Gina, I think. She's a supermodel. This is his girlfriend after his divorce fell apart, or his marriage. He was married for 26 years. And I guess I had the good taste to use the bleeped version. I also found the unedited version. But yeah. He's using the N-word there.
Oh, was it a pack of wolves?
It was a pack. She's getting raped by a pack of wolves.
Okay.
Let's go with that. But so that comes out, and just everybody is basically shell-shocked by his image basically being shattered. Before, people kind of had a problem with his theology and his take on like Judaism, the way he painted the Jewish faith in Passion of the Christ basically as the villains, became the big issue from 2004 to 2006 with Mel Gibson being harangued by the Anti-Defamation League in Jewish culture. Is that your understanding of it, Ryan?
Well, I think that call might have been 2010. Not that it really matters.
That call's 2010?
I think so. According to Wikipedia, it was 2010, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
The arrest and the we'll get to that story, of course, but I believe that was actually 4 years prior to because it says here July 2010, Gibson had been recorded during the call with Grigorovia. I don't know if I'm saying her name right.
Yeah, that's her last.
She was that Russian model. Yeah, so that was, it says here, raped by a pack of wolves. Okay, it was a pack of wolves. Okay. Yeah. That's what I know. Wikipedia actually wrote it out, what he said. So that was 2010. But That being said, it's fine. Whatever, we got the years wrong. But I will say this: it's interesting with the Passion. Back to the Passion a little bit, because this is the catalyst. I think you're right. This is sort of it's where everything seemed to be going kind of swimmingly with Gibson. It would have been interesting to see the alternate universe had he never done the film. And I'm not conspiratorial here. I'm not trying to do that. But the reality is, if you're going to tell the Christ story as a story, again, I was religious. I believed in the story that the Bible presented. It was something I subscribed to, something I felt strongly about. And if you're to tell the story objectively and just say, this is what happened, the Jewish people are not put in a good light. And it's tricky. That's all I'm saying. It's like anytime you cover a sensitive subject, especially with religion, it gets very tricky if you're accurate, because time is not kind to this kind of stuff or this sort of rhetoric, in that, because I think personally, I don't think it happened. I don't think there was a son of God who was crucified. I don't think truly a God figure, as per the Bible, was. Now, have people been crucified? Yes. Was there a zealot named Jesus who might have been crucified? Sure, I guess. Was he literally the son of God who had God powers? I don't know. I don't think so.
Right.
And so what happened though in the Bible, for anyone who doesn't know the Bible, maybe people don't. In the Bible, folks, the Jews were under Roman law, and they kind of lived sort of peacefully under Roman dominion. And they had two people up for trial. They had Barabbas, who was a thief, and Jesus, who was quote unquote innocent, and of course the Son of God. And to keep the peace in the streets, there wouldn't be any rioting, so to speak. Pontius Pilate turns to the crowd and says, who should I release unto you? Do you like to make peace with you guys? I've got two Jewish prisoners here. Do you want the thief or do you want Jesus? And they accept the thief. Give us Barabbas and crucify Jesus. Crucify the and then the Bible says the sin would be upon their heads and all their generations' heads thereafter. And people have held on to that. That, my friends, is sort of the genesis of the poor Jewish plight that we kind of see today via the Bible story. It's used as ammunition towards some people's feelings on the Jewish faith, is my understanding. I could be wrong.
I think that's a good explanation for anybody that maybe is unaware. And it's interesting how it's still maybe the same kind of scenario, even though we're saying that's a story from the Bible. People's representation of their faith, Jesus, it was so divisive even then that they're going to go with, they just decide to go with somebody else because they disagree with that. And that still happens to this day, kind of, with certain political leanings and religious leanings. It's all still relevant, which is crazy since that was written so long ago.
So Mel makes the film The Passion. This is the problem. He makes the film The Passion, and the Jews did it. He basically created a biblically accurate film that doesn't look good for a certain group of people, and that's part of the problem. Is Mel didn't have to do this. That's what he didn't have to make.
I know.
You don't have to make a film about a holy war. You don't have to make a Cran film. You don't have to make the Bible. You don't have to do it.
I know. Yeah, he's gonna make this bed. He's gonna lie in it. And if it was 2024, he could have just taken all this shit to Rumble and probably had 2 million subscribers in 2 days. But no. Back in 2006, they're going to character assassinate him, and he's going to make it super easy.
I just wonder, had he not? Well, there's two things: had he not made the film, or had he not been arrested, I wonder where his career would be. Right. I don't know what. I mean, obviously that arrest and what he said in the arrest, we'll get to that clip, is horrible, but there obviously seems to be an underlying issue that he seems to have. That's probably why he made the film. Yeah. And well, sorry.
I know what I wanted to say. It's that maybe you disagree with what Mel Gibson thinks, but also Mel Gibson's dad, I think it needs to be brought up here that people disagree with Mel Gibson's dad. Most people do, because Mel Gibson's dad was a Holocaust denier. So Mel Gibson was raised and basically nurtured, and these ideas were cultivated in a young Mel Gibson from the beginning through his dad. And that's going to come up later too. But I think we've set the table enough. I really want to get to some of the clips.
Sure.
So this is a Diane Sawyer interview after so 2006, the nail in the coffin really for Mel Gibson's career was his arrest in Malibu, where he was drunk driving, and then the arresting officer was Jewish, and Mel Gibson goes on a huge anti-Jew tirade against the police officer, and he has some kind of explanation that I'm going to bring up too, but it's just, if he had only been arrested for DWI, career fine. It's these comments that got him blackballed from Hollywood.
I guess I must have been a little overwrought. So that's what happens. Too much pressure, too much work. You do things that go against good judgment. So that's it. A few drinks later, and I was in the back of a police car wailing. So
what is so strange to me is that he's so matter of fact about this whole thing, which is off-putting. And it's just like, you know how it is. You take a few hits of tequila and suddenly you're under arrest. Well, no, it's not like you take some tokes off of Maui Wowie and suddenly you're jerking off on a public bus. The one thing does not lead to the other, Mel. Is so he's just kind of like, hey, you know how it is. That's not a great reaction to why you're doing this interview.
It was a night of bad choices all around. Had he chosen not to drink, this wouldn't have happened. Had he chosen not to drink and drive, this wouldn't happen. If he chose not to drive poorly, this wouldn't have happened while he was drunk. It's a myriad of poor choices where I'm not throwing Gibson necessarily under the bus here by saying this, but this goes for, I guess, this type of thing where if you do something enough, I'm not saying you've done this. I know I haven't. But let's just say you drank and drove once in your life. Let's just say you just did it once. It was bad. You did it, but you made it home safely. So the odds are you could probably drive home a little bit under the influence, but you got home. Okay, it's still illegal, but you got home. But you do it enough, you're going to get caught, because the odds are you just keep doing something, you're going to get caught. So I think in Mel's case, it's probably something he's done numerous times. And you just do something enough, you're going to get caught. I don't think this is the first time in his life, and I know it's not because he's been arrested before it.
Yeah.
But that you get what I'm saying? So I think people like him, celebrity or no celebrity, when they get caught, I wonder what the odds are. It was the first time somebody did a DUI and got caught. It happens, I'm sure, but I bet you it's not the first time, but it's the first time they got caught. So if you do something enough, you're going to get caught.
I'll assert that. How many times did he get caught where the officer walked up and goes, "Oh, holy shit, it's Mel Gibson. Can I have your autograph? Have a good night, Mel." And they just let him go because
it's probably happened at least once. At
least once 100 times. Yeah. So the fact that somebody actually,
saw through.
Well, maybe it all goes back to people's opinions being informed by, like we said, it was a Jewish officer. Maybe if the officer was Mormon, they would have let him go. But this guy's
I bet you they would have actually. You know what? They probably would have.
Yeah. And this guy's like, hey, I didn't really like the Passion so much, so you're under arrest.
There's probably a bit of that. And I'd also argue with Mel's response, which I know we'll get to, his response to the officer, whether he was Jewish or not, because the officer saw it through, that's when he flips his wig, so to speak, because that happened to Reese Witherspoon on one of your episodes. Same idea. Yeah. Reese Witherspoon has probably been pulled over. She's probably been let go by a police officer because, it's Reese Witherspoon. Okay, ma'am, can you just please, next time, can you just, I know, can you just please, you're Reese Witherspoon. I don't want to upset Reese Witherspoon, I bet you that's happened. But the fact that an officer saw it through, that's when they get to the, like, what? You're seeing this through? I can't believe a lot of your clips that you've shown in other episodes. That's the kind of behavior we're seeing from people when, they're seeing this through and they start freaking out and saying things that they later quote unquote regret.
Right. It's the entitlement of it all. And the phrase "Don't you know who I am" is
it.
cliche for a reason.
Yeah,
but
I tried that. It doesn't work.
Yeah, well, they have to know who you are.
Oh, is that how it works? Okay.
And I want to get your opinion on this next clip, because I listen to a lot of apology tours and they've become commonplace to me. And this predates those routine formulaic apology tours. So this one has a different flavor, and it might be a toothpaste flavor, Ed. Clip 2.
How long have you been drinking again?
A couple months. Years go by, you're fine. And then all of a sudden, in a heartbeat, in an instant, on an impulse, somebody shoves a glass of mezcal in front of your nose and says, "It's from Oaxaca." And you go, "Wow." And it's burning its way through your esophagus, and you go, "Oh man, what did I do that for? Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube."
You know what's funny about watching, and I watched, of course, the whole interview prior to the show, and what I noticed with Mel, and I've noticed about a few actors, quite frankly, and he is very much like his Riggs character in the Lethal Weapons as he is in this interview. The mannerisms, the way he speaks, and he does it this way in a lot of his films, actually. Now, it's not good or bad. I'm just saying, I think a lot of actors are written, it's just easier, or they act just themselves in a movie because it's just easier to, I'm just going to be Ryan in a Lethal Weapon film. So I'll just be me. Give me the lines and I'll be a cop, sure, and I'll take down the bad guys and have a shootout. But my behavior will be Ryan-esque. I'm not really anybody. I'm just Ryan with a gun. I think so. Watching Mel as he speaks, the way he handles Diane here, it's like, is this Marty Riggs being interviewed?
Yeah. Well, that is my point. Is it seems very rehearsed, doesn't it? It seems like a performance. All the descriptors that it's burning its way down your throat, and I'm acting it out, and all the descriptive adjectives. No one talks this way. So this is rehearsed. This is scripted. It's performative. I don't know if
it's rehearsed, but it's performative. Yes, I think it's definitely performative. He is being charismatic in a way to, like, it's a very entertaining interview. But it did not. What's the word? Ingratiate? I can never say that word properly.
I think that's right.
Okay, myself to Mel. Like I didn't find myself.
It's odd because he didn't ingratiate himself to you.
Yeah, like I was like, I'm usually not on the interviewer side. I thought Diane was I didn't like her questions either. I thought the whole interview it wasn't good for both parties for different reasons. But anyways, Well,
I do think it's like he's handling his reputation. This is all a PR stunt. His publicist got him booked on the show so that he can, so his career doesn't go in the toilet. And I think he thinks that he's pulling it off. I don't think he thought that he would get canceled for 10 years based on what happened, and that this interview would make everything go away, and it didn't. But to that point, I just want to make sure that you notice his expression and his eyes in this next clip. Like, who reacts this way when somebody is talking about your DWI arrest and the fact that the whole Jewish community now has a huge problem with you, and this is your reaction in clip 3?
Were you drinking from the open bottle of tequila in the car?
I had a couple of slugs, yeah.
So how drunk were you?
It's not a question of how drunk you are, or you're impaired. Your judgment is impaired enough to do insane things like try and drive at high speeds. Even a couple of drinks, you lose all humility. Everything is just, you become a braggart and a blowhard.
So there's a lack of shame that he has when he's having this conversation. And like you said, he's trying to disarm us all with charisma. And he's just like, yeah, I know I ran your dog over when I was drunk driving. I was doing 60 in a 35. But have you seen these baby blues? He's like flashing his eyes and like trying to be like very charming. And it's like, okay, Mel, but people thought Ted Bundy was handsome too. And how did that work out?
Yeah, he should have at that point. He should have said, I was very drunk. I was absolutely very drunk. And because of that, I would suspect a lot of choices that I would not have done sober were done as a drunk person. I was too drunk to drive and too drunk to properly speak, and it was showcased that night. There you go.
Right.
There's my apology. There's my apology. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I'll take it. I actually did get plenty of apologies out of this interview and this episode. I was very thrilled when I was going through it to discover that it fits right. It's right in the wheelhouse.
We're going back to the old school, old apologies podcast.
Yeah. So now this is the stuff that got Mel blackballed from Hollywood, and I titled this clip "World War J."
The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Are those anti-Semitic words?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds horrible. And I'm ashamed of that. That came out of my mouth. And I'm not that. That's not who I am, you know?
Okay, this is it. Okay,
Yeah.
This is tricky. Okay.
Get into it. Well, like I said, Mel was raised with a crazy dad that he hated Jewish people, and then Mel gets pulled over, and he knew from his track record with his wife of 26 years that she was probably going to leave him because of this, and he's bombed. And Wikipedia said that he later claimed that he was so drunk and distraught about his wife potentially leaving him that what he was saying there was an attempt at suicide by cop. He was trying to provoke the cop. And I don't know, a lot of people, when their career is like nosediving, we've covered some other people, Tom Sandoval most recently is kind of like hiding behind like, oh, well, I was suicidal when all this went down. So let's go easy on old Mel because I know my career's in the toilet and everybody thinks I'm the world's biggest asshole, but I'm having suicidal thoughts. So maybe let's ease off on me, even though I was pushing, like I was provoking a cop of the Jewish faith and saying that I'll crazy things to because he wouldn't let me go, basically.
There's so much to unpackage here. Okay, so I agree with the upbringing of the father. I love my parents and I don't begrudge them at all, but I was raised, like I said, I was raised Mormon in a very strict Mormon household, and when I say strict, I mean I was Orthodox. I was a true blue Mormon boy. Like I even served a mission. It's a whole other story. We can get into that some other day, but I was like that. I was a missionary with the name tag and everything, knocking on doors. So it was my lifeblood. It was how I was raised. Had I been raised in an atheist home, like my kids are, we're atheist/agnostic home. There's no religion in our home. We don't talk about religion in a worshipy sense, just an information sense. Like there's other religions out there, but we don't subscribe to any. We're just a family, just living our life. And so my kids are raised that way. So they're raised in a home where there is no religion. They're just chill about religion. They don't have any feelings of religion. They're not anti this or pro that. They're just aware that other people have different beliefs, but they don't care what those beliefs are. That's how they're raised. So I'm not giving him a pass so much as just saying you can't say that doesn't matter. You can't say that doesn't define someone's thinking. You can be raised until you. Now he didn't break free of that. I get it. He chose to maybe still live in that mind frame because he said what he said with the cop there. But I don't think he's as orthodox as his father was in those thinking. But at the same time, he was raised that way, so it's in his bloodstream a little bit. Yeah. Hey, it's Ed.
Hey, it's one of those times that Ryan was worried about, like, where does this guy come from? So I think you bring up a really good point with that. But by this point in his life, I think, he's a 50, 60-year-old man at this point. He probably has read something or seen something else to change that basis of his thought process.
He should have.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I understand what you're saying is we can't take away that, his father was a complete piece of garbage person, but
are you saying 2024 Mel, Ed, or you're saying at this point when he arrested?
I'm saying 2006 Mel, 2010
40
Mel.
something. He was 40 something, but doesn't excuse. You're right, and that's what I mean. Like, I broke away from my life thinking, but it took. I would say that it took a tragic. Well, it took a big moment in my life to kind of make me reform my world thinking. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I didn't hate Jews or Jewish people. I don't hate them, so I never had that kind. It was a personal thing of just how I viewed the world. But for him, maybe I don't know where he is now. Do we know where he is now, Andy? Is that a spoiler where he is now with this whole thing?
Yeah, I'll button up the whole package with where Mel is these days.
Can I say who Ed is, for example? Can I just say who Ed is? Because your listeners know. I'm really excited. I get this. There he is. So I asked the question off the air here because I've heard this podcast every episode now, and I'm like, who's this guy that keeps jumping in? I figured it was a producer type guy, but it's your brother-in-law. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. He's more of an engineer than a producer, but he is.
I don't produce anything.
My brother-in-law, and
I think it's great. He does a great job. And when he chimes in, they're always good thoughts. And I just want to say, when you chime in and give your thoughts, it's always well thought out and everything. And
I think Ryan should sit in more than Joe.
I think Ryan is opening up a sticky wicket of now you're giving Ed carte blanche to jump in whenever he wants. You don't want that, right?
I want to take one other thing with this is that, yes, the father upbringing, yes, and I agree with Ed that at some point he should have said, oh, this is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing, though, is imagine this is controversial. I was thinking long and hard today. I was on my run this morning, and I was like, man, how do I approach this? Because it's tricky. It is. Imagine if Mel just said to the same cop, he says, man, Russians start all the wars.
Yeah. If it wasn't a Russian cop, he probably would have been okay.
Yeah, well, or even if it was a Russian cop, the court of public opinion.
Oh, well, I see what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. See what I'm getting at? And I'm trying hard not to be controversial here. That's not my intent, but I'm just making the point that Mel picked what he picked. I'm just saying, if he just said the words, Russian starts a lot, and look, they have. Yeah. Russia has been a problem. They've been a thorn. Or China starts all the wars, all the conflicts. So even though it might not be true or not entirely, what are you talking about? But you still picked a country or a group of people. So if he said Russia starts a lot of the wars in the world, which according to right now, that's kind of happened with Ukraine. They've been a pain in the U.S. side for decades. In the court of public opinion, everyone would be like, yeah, well, and it probably shouldn't have. But
exactly, like I was saying, if he just got a DWI, if he got arrested for DWI, and it would have just been, oh, all right, just another day in Hollywood. But no, he picks the one Jewish cop and says, I'll give you 6 million reasons to shoot me dead. And all of a sudden, everybody's got a big problem with it because he already has this track record with the community, like I said, based on passion. So this is just another arrow in the quiver for people to attack, his enemies to attack him with. And he's doing it to himself.
And back to the very, very beginning of this podcast episode, we said at the very beginning, because it comes to this point here with this conversation, if religion, let's just pretend, like John Lennon said, there was no religion. If there was no religion in this world ever, that we still have our conflicts, we could still have our whatevers, but imagine if religion just didn't exist. Mm-hmm. This statement by Mel would never have been said.
Yeah. It's tricky, though.
It is tricky. At the end of the day,
about how I thought that it was because people had too much time on their hands that they were so into religion, but also it was such a lawless way of life back then that people needed moral codes to live their lives.
Maybe it just would have been about land all the same, or food sources, or I understand war. I know wars happen, but it seems to be exasperated by religion. Like wars are going to happen, conflicts will happen. I get it. It's not all religion. All wars are all religion. There's just tribal wars, conflicts, boundaries, resources, whatever it might be, citizenships, things like that. But I'm just saying this is a tricky thing, and that's why this is about as much as I know. I'm not very scholared on this at all. It's unfortunate he didn't just say Russia starts all the wars. He would have got a pass had he picked a different country. Even if he said America starts all the wars, people would have been like, "Oh, that's kind of stupid." But I guess you're Australians or whatever. Like,
well, he said it on purpose for a reason.
I never heard that before. I never heard that. That's it. So you found that. I never heard that he was looking for trouble. So he was looking for trouble.
I think this was like years after the fact, kind of an explanation, a further explanation about why this unfolded the way that it did. But
he did say they interviewed the Diane, so that's why I question.
Yeah. It was his Wikipedia is long and it's kind of towards the bottom. But Mel wants Diane to know that alcoholism is a demon that he fights and a disease that he's afflicted with. And he doesn't know where the road is going to take him when he starts popping bottles. So it's just, something, an unpredictable thing that he deals with in his life.
Well, alcohol is used to kill pain, and it is no excuse, by the way. It's not a good enough excuse.
If the police officer had been black,
maybe. I don't know.
What would you have said?
Who knows? I'd have to get loaded again and tell you, and then be in those conditions again, because it's unpredictable what's going to come flying out.
Just wait 4 years till I call my girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, who knows, Diane? If it was a black cop and I was drunk on beer, then I probably would have rap battled him. But if it was an Asian cop and I was white wine drunk, I would have, I would have been pulling my eyelids in all the directions. So you never know until I'm completely loaded what kind of minority is standing in front of me, how I'm going to react, Diane. It's just unpredictable in that way.
I would have called him a wolf, Diane.
Yeah, pack of wolves got me arrested in Malibu. So he obviously has anger management issues.
Sure.
Diane wants to know where this anger comes from, and Mel is going to put on a little show for us again to get out of giving a real answer.
I've talked to people about that. Where is it coming from, this anger? I can get really mad I can murder inanimate objects. You should see me choking the toaster in the morning. So I'm kind of a work in progress right now. So you got me a little green. See? I mean, I just got out of the straitjacket with the messy hair and everything.
Now, I know Mel is a big Three Stooges fan, but why did he go old Larry Curly and Moe in this moment?
I had that exact note, too. I'm just like, this is not James Lipton asking to meet the character Martin Riggs on Inside the Actors Studio, Mel. You don't have to do your Curly Howard impression and all is forgiven. It's not going to work.
What does he mean by he gets so angry he murders inanimate objects, like his toaster, strangles his toaster?
Yeah.
It's very hard to wrap your hands around a 4-slice toaster. That's a pretty big rip.
I would say that I could relate to that, though, as somebody that when I used to drive the truck, and every once in a while you would have
road rage,
an overly bad day where the freight in the back gets knocked over and you're stuck picking it up, and as somebody that goes from doing that physical labor where nothing's going right to then have to turn around and go be customer facing and talk to the people that you deal with on a regular basis and not want to take your frustration that's happening out in the truck out on your customers, you start to slam things, inanimate objects against the wall of the trailer because you're having a bad day. So I can relate to that. Better the 2-liter than the customer. I'm not going to take it out on them. So I think that's what he's trying to say.
Did you tell any of the customers who starts all the wars at that time?
Yeah. I said I would have been on time if it wasn't for the Jews.
Or those pack of wolves wait for me outside trying to take my wallet.
Yeah.
Oh,
if it wasn't for the war in Ukraine, it would be a better day. Man. But so this next clip is candid. This is harsh, and again, the stark reality of the situation doesn't seem to stop Mel from acting like he's on some kind of media tour promoting one of his movies.
I just went home, and some of my kids were there, and I talked to them for a little bit, and it was a little rough that morning. So I chased it down with a few cold ones, in the full knowledge.
That morning?
Oh, yeah. It was kind of unbearable to face. So it was something I thought, well, this is it. This will be the end of it, but I just have to get through this morning,
But wait a minute. You talked to your kids while you were slugging down more to get through it?
You're not operating well, but, you have to do something. And, I wasn't sort of flashing in front of them or anything, but...
Well, to be fair, I'm a father of 6 kids myself, and I tell you, they do drive you to drink. So
6. Well, okay. Well, yeah, I just don't think that he realizes at this point how over his career actually is. That he's going to be blackballed for 10 years, and he's minimizing it. I think eventually this will. I think he thinks that this is going to live in everybody's head as a movie that he did that they didn't enjoy. Like he'll be out in public and somebody will be recognize him, be like, "Aren't you that crazy anti-Semite?" And Mel will react with, I was also a rooster in Chicken Run. What's your point? Yeah, he thinks it's just gonna fall to the wayside as time goes by, but it didn't. And now we arrive at the point in the interview that justifies the existence of this episode on the show. Clip 8, the apology.
What do you say? Is I'm sorry?
Yeah, you do. I've apologized more than anyone I know, so it's getting old. And
How long's your list
oh,
of apologies necessary?
oh, huge, for my whole life.
How did you tell your wife?
I just told her, straight out. Slipped again, yeah. And she was like, of course, she doesn't like that. But she was, gracious, compassionate.
She was so gracious when she moved out for 3 years and compassionate when she divorced me after seeing me online with my new girlfriend in the tabloids.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about the apology. I mean, I think he was. This is tricky. It's always tricky because, as I listen to your show, and of course I've seen apologies before I listen to your podcast. Of course, just being in the pulp culture world, you see apologies from celebrities and the likes, politicians or whoever. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think people, and Mel included, are just all good or all bad, meaning we're complicated as human beings. We can have a myriad of emotions and philosophies and behaviors. It does, like one bad phone call. Look, you take the worst thing I ever said. I'm remarried right now, and I was married before, and that's where 2 of my 6 kids came from, was the first marriage. And if you were to take one of my worst fights with my ex-wife, who I'm good friends with at this day. I just want to make that clear. We're good friends now, but during those harder times, those harder years, of course, we're young and stupid. I said some stupid things. She said some stupid things, and I would dare say she probably wouldn't want any of our really bad arguments ever recorded and released to the public. Okay, let's just be fair. Because right now we have a great friendship, a great relationship with our respective spouses and our adult children, and we'll share grandkid duties. It's like it's all gravy. But I'm saying, can you imagine if we as an ex couple were labeled as those people 25 or 20 odd years ago?
Yeah,
it's not fair. Like I'm kind of getting into later, maybe the capping off of this episode. It was like, at what point do we end the cancellation is what I'm getting, because I'm a human and I have said some terrible things in my life, not about any religions or creeds necessarily, but at people, at other human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, it might just be one person, but I've said some mean and terrible things that in that moment of anger and darkness and just hurt and pain, we can say terrible things and then you add alcohol to the mix. You add your own personal demons to the mix, your own personal upbringings to the mix, and all these other things. And then you record it and release it, and then all the public likes to say, "Aha,
right.
Gotcha! Look at you, you failure of a human." And it's just like, what point do we say, okay, I don't know. Am I making any sense?
You're right. You're right, and it was an awful trend that I don't think it's over. But when people are retroactively trying to dig up things that are not okay now, but not cancelable back when you talk about Kevin Hart's tweets or the movie Yankee Doodle Dandy. You could go all the way back to that. There's blackface in that. But people evolve over time, and just because Jeremy Piven said the N-word in Scary Movie 3 doesn't mean that Scary Movie 3 is an amazing movie. And
it doesn't make Jeremy Piven a racist or anyway. Like I want to quote one of my favorite, of course, singers of all time, Axl Rose. He said, "Don't judge me by my past. I don't live there anymore."
Yeah. and he definitely has some questionable lyrics. Don't go listen to One in a Million, everybody.
It's their best song. But
yeah.
I love that song. It was funny. He actually isn't a racist. His bodyguard at the time was a black man. Like he's not. Anyways, there's a whole other thing. Yeah, don't get me started on that song. What it means or what he's talking. So you wouldn't write it today. You wouldn't write it today, but.
So he was paying a black guy to do his bidding. That's so not racist.
Oh my gosh, that came out wrong. Anyways, the point is, he has no problem being around. Okay, would you stop it? Okay.
No, I know. His balls.
No, but you get what I'm saying
like,
about
you can't hold people's 2004 antics to a 2024 lens.
So what I'm getting at with Mel, I don't know if we're there yet. You got more clips, that's fine. But here's the question: at what point do we, Mel? This is 2006. I know. I don't know. When do we release? When do we release people who've committed manslaughter? Literally, people have committed murder and or manslaughter, and they're released from jail for good behavior, and they go out in the public and they can work again.
Yeah.
Now they're not celebrities, but they go out and they can live a life, get married. Murderers have gotten married, Andy. They have been released from prison and have started families. So at what point do we release these celebrities from prison? Well, what point do we say, you've paid your dues, it's been 20 years, let's enjoy your work again?
Yeah.
Or is that never allowed?
I'm gonna echo that sentiment later in my notes. I don't want to skip down and find it, but I definitely have that same opinion. I know what you're saying. And let's see, Mel's going on about, he's going to talk about how this is a wake-up call and what it took to arrive there in clip 9.
Sometimes you need a cold bucket of water in the face to sort of snap to, because you're dealing with a sort of a malady of the soul, an obsession of the mind, and a physical allergy. And some people need a big tap on the shoulder. In my case, public humiliation on a global scale seems to be what was required.
And like we said, this kind of wouldn't have happened if you didn't get busted due to your own bravado. You didn't say, you're being humiliated because of the things you said. And if you hadn't done that, then we would have Lethal Weapon 5. And
apparently he's still working on it.
Yeah, Danny DeVito is going to do full penetration in it. And are you Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Oh, I know you're referring to. I've seen. I just started watching this. I'm only like 3 or 4 seasons in now, but it's funny, and I love it. But I know I'm very behind. But I knew exactly what you referred to when you said that. But I think he actually is working on it. If funny enough, but I could be wrong.
Yep, he is. It's in production. But I think Diane is asking one question and Mel is answering another in this next clip.
Oh, okay.
There are lots of people who get drunk and don't say anti-Semitic things.
Oh, yes, there are. People say all sorts of horrible things.
No, but who
about anything. And not just anti-Semitic things. They say horrendous things. They say to their parents, I hate you and I want you to die. And, they don't mean that stuff. It's the stuff that comes out when you're loaded it's extreme.
But if it's not in you, is it going to come out?
It has to have some kind of place somewhere. And you have to ask, where is it coming from? Where is it coming from?
The question wasn't about how drunk you have to be to say something like that, Mel. It's that your problem is that you think like that, and why do you think those things? But Mel, he's just like, oh no, I know a whole bunch of guys that say this type of stuff all the time, no matter how drunk they are, oftentimes sober. I know a whole clan of guys that think this way, and I could take you to the rally if you want, Diane. You know, you're the right shade. You can come.
Yeah, look, I'm not excusing Mel here. And I'm not trying to Mel-splain what he's saying here. I think what he's saying is that, of course, people have. This is all I was trying to say. Is he could have said Ryan has said some terrible things to his ex-wife. That's what he's saying. He's saying people have said terrible things. It doesn't mean that's who they are. And Diane's saying, well, it's in there, isn't it? Like, why would they say it? Like, I'll use myself. Why would Ryan say something terrible to his ex-wife? Because Mel say, because they're angry, they're hurt, they're in pain. When you're under stress, you digress. That's the whole point, is you're not that person 24/7. But in that moment, for whatever reason, you felt, I felt hurt, let's say. So when I'm hurt, I lash out. but it's not who I am. I don't go around lashing out at people all day. I wouldn't have a job in the military. I wouldn't have a wonderful marriage now if I was just Ryan, the guy who lashes out. But there have been moments in my 48 years of life, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't act that way.
Yeah.
We hope to learn it. We hope to learn and grow. But it's not the defining person who you are, but it's all these things that make us who we are today. And so I'm glad for my mistakes because I do learn from them, and I have a better life now than I've ever had. But I've learned from some terrible things in my life that have happened to me or I've done to other people. I make myself sound like a bad person. It's probably the religious part of me just feeling guilty about everything. But the point is that we've all made mistakes. And again, if you were to edit your life, Andy, I dare say, or Ed, if you guys were to edit your life, all the bad things, and make that a real, people think, holy, who is this guy?
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Well, nobody wants to see that.
Don't bring me into this.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, now you don't want to be here.
Ed's working on his reel right now. He's piecing it together in the background.
Yeah. I don't know. We talk about Stuttering John way too much on WATP, and I'm seeing all the parallels of I got way too drunk, and then I took like the lowest blow that I could possibly throw at somebody that was being a detractor of mine. I'm being recorded without my knowledge, like all of these loser things that are happening to Mel Gibson and Stuttering John. What I'm saying is Stuttering John is as good as Mel Gibson. But
I was going to say, how dare you guys accuse me of comparing Saint Anger to Clutch, and now you compare Stuttering John to the great Mel Gibson. How dare you?
Yeah. Okay, this one kind of blew my mind. Clip 11. Mel's going to double down on his comments here, and listen to how long this pause is before he decides to stick to his guns.
Oh boy.
Well,
The Jews are responsible.
Well, strictly speaking, that's not true because it takes two to tango.
What are the Jews responsible for?
What are they responsible for? I think that they're not blameless in that conflict. There's been aggression and retaliation and aggression. It's just part of being in conflict and being at war. So they're not blameless. Of course they're not.
He's a braver man than I would have been. I would have been. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know where I could.
That pause is. He's just like, well, I'm not wrong, but Diane, technically all the tribal wars in Africa weren't started by the Jews, but that's only because they weren't there, Diane. If they had been there, they'd have.
He should have doubled down. It said, well, they did kill Christ. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. So,
oh man,
in the next clip, if you've watched to this point where you have to come out and say this on national television, then it's already too late for you, Mel.
Let me be real clear here, in sobriety, sitting here in front of you, national television, that I don't believe that Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. I mean, that's an outrageous, drunken statement.
Russia is too.
Yeah, of course I don't believe that. It's just an exaggeration of what I actually believe. Yeah. When a porn addict says they've watched 1 billion videos and jerked off 1 billion times. It's like that, but 1 billion wars, Diane. You get it.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, it's obvious. Look, if I were to Mel-splain again, he does believe Israel is guilty of stuff, and they've done things biblically and in modern day history. They are a hot pocket of topics, issues, discussions, and he's on the side of they aren't innocent. Let's be honest. That's what he feels. That's what he feels. I've already guessed. That's what he's saying. He's saying, yeah, I know I shouldn't say it. I know it's controversial to say it, but I'm on the side that, yeah, I don't know if he's pro-Palestinian today. I don't know what his thoughts are today, but I would say in 2006, he was like, Israel is a hot pocket of issues and they're not blameless. And that's what he's saying. I don't know why he was saying, I don't know what, like I've gone 48 years. This is the most I've ever talked about. It's not my place. I don't know. Nobody wants to hear what I have to think of. And I'm not there. I'm in Canada. I'm not a part of the conflict. So I really don't have an opinion or say, because I don't know what it is both sides are feeling. I'm not there. It's not my fight. Like, I'm not a part of this fight. And I don't mean that I'm not aware or care of the suffering, or I'm not trying to learn. But what I'm saying is my opinion is irrelevant to the conflict. There's, I don't know.
I'm glad you're putting it that way, because it's irrelevant to guys like you and I, right?
Yeah.
But what Mel Gibson has done at this point is kind of zoom the microscope out so far that he's applying his personal interactions with individuals when it came to the production of Passion of the Christ. Now he's zooming the microscope or the telescope or whatever out so far and applying it to generalizations on a global level. And this dovetails into the next clip, is why I'm setting it up this way, because Mel is going to attribute some of these opinions to what he went through during the production of Passion. And this is currently known as the yay factor.
Oh.
Let's clip 13.
And the other place it may have come from is, as you know, a couple of years ago, I released the film Passion. Now, even before anyone saw a frame of film, for an entire year, I was subjected to a pretty brutal sort of public beating. And during the course of that, I think I probably had my rights violated in many different ways. As an artist, as a Christian, just as a human being.
So we don't know what Mel's experiences and encounters were with the detractors of the film. And it's unknown who or what somebody did to stonewall the production or get it shut down or torpedoed at the box office. We only know, we're only left to speculate about what he's talking about there. But what is known is the arrest report for Melvin Horatio Gibson. And we know what you said to a Jewish police officer. I don't know if that's his middle name. I'm just making it up.
Oh, I was going to say, I Google that.
Yeah. But
what he's referring to. He's saying it without saying it. And I'm surprised we haven't brought this up yet. But of course, there's that, we hear it all the time. We've heard it all the time. If you don't follow Hollywood, then you wouldn't hear it. But if you follow Hollywood to any degree, you hear this all the time, that the Jewish people run Hollywood. There are a lot of, from agents to directors, writers, money. A lot of it, and maybe that's true. I don't know what the stats are. I don't have any sources. I'm just saying it's said enough that I don't know if it's ever really debated that it's not true, but there seems to be a powerful representation within that industry that might be of that background, which who cares? Like, that's irrelevant. But if you make a film, so I think what Mel's saying in this instance, he's saying, I'm making a film that paints this group of people in a bad light because it reflects what's written in the Bible, and he's getting pushback from Hollywood. He didn't say the word Hollywood, I don't think, in that whole sentence, but he's saying there are people who don't like what I'm doing, and those people are in Hollywood, and I'm being blackballed or blacklisted from Hollywood. I could be wrong, but I think he's saying that.
He's saying that whatever Miramax and the Weinstein brothers were maybe doing everything they could to make the production of The Passion, a problem. And that's what Kanye is saying. And for me, I'm saying that just because he made a bad deal and people held him to it, and he lost money because of it. And it's made his career more difficult. And now he's just, painting the industry with, the whole industry with, or the people that work there with a certain colored brush. And Mel Gibson,
Kanye? Oh, Kanye,
yeah. And that's why Kanye is so off the handle about the Jewish faith. And it's the same thing with Mel Gibson. It's like, I've never had an interaction like this in my entire life. So why would I say something like this? Right. But apparently they have, and they've decided that they need to be outspoken about it.
It's an odd thing to bring up. Like, you don't have to. That's the amazing thing here is, I know I'll never be famous or whatever, but you don't have to talk. Like, nobody's asking. You don't have to bring it up. Don't talk about it. Like, if anyone asks Ryan, what's your political leanings, I'd be like, well, I would actually say something like, there's a reason why the voting booths are private. There's a reason.
Yeah,
that's
good
the reason. Like, it's not, people watch my movies or listen to my music. They don't Nobody cares what I think. And the reality is that the voting booths are private for a reason, because we should separate my political or religious beliefs from my art and from my entertainment. So nothing, one has nothing to do with necessarily the other. But some of the it's weird. It's just who they are. They feel the need to have this battle, and I don't get it, because it just complicates their art.
It's bad for business.
Yeah, bad for business. Yeah,
you never hear Tom Cruise talk about religion and politics. You never hear Taylor Swift talk about her political views. And these people are sucking. They have a money vacuum, and they're raking it in because of that. So just keep your stupid fucking opinions to yourself, Mel, and you would have been fine. But this was a delightful part of the interview, because guess what, everybody? Not only did we already get our apology out of this episode, but we're also going to get the even more rare demanding of an apology. Very rare and exciting, Ryan. Let's hear this.
Film came out, it was released, and you could have heard a pin drop, even the crickets weren't chirping. But the other thing I never heard was one single word of apology. I thought I dealt with that stuff. All forgiveness, but the human heart's a funny thing. Sometimes you can bear the scars of resentment, and it'll come out, when you're overwrought and you take a few drinks. So,
is there hate in your heart? Is there anger in your heart?
There was anger from that, I think, because I felt that I was unjustly treated. My resentment stemmed from certain individuals treating me in a certain way.
Certain individuals, again.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, certain individuals never apologized for trying to stand in the way of the $370 million domestic gross of The Passion of the Christ. That the movie came out and a pin dropped. Oh, did it? Because it made $622 million worldwide. I think you're okay while you're dancing to the bank, past certain individuals that didn't want the movie to come out.
Yeah, he's worth $425 million right now. He's doing okay.
Yeah, nobody's worried about him. But Mel had issued a few written apologies this is a legit apology tour. This is, where the definition comes from. He goes on, he does multiple interviews saying that he fucked up, that he's an alcoholic, that he has anger management problems. He doesn't know why he would ever, it's crazy that he would think this way about the Jewish faith. And then he has to go and have a meeting with the Anti-Defamation League and the spiritual leaders. I forgot my drop board. I'm like missing all of the greatest hits on the drop board because Chris Brown's spiritual leaders drop. But this was ongoing, and he refers to public humiliation and having to endure being humiliated in public because of this. But I guess, clip 15, this is his reputation, him realizing that how he needs to repair his reputation.
But I heard back that a woman who had read the apology actually wept with relief. Now, that sort of hit me. I was like, relief? Oh my God, she was afraid. She was terrified. And wow, I don't think I realized until like a couple of 5 days later, that what I did was press a big fear button.
You didn't realize that?
I didn't realize the level of fear that was there.
What did you think it was?
Me, it was just the stupid ramblings of a drunkard, And I guess I had to sort of think, well, hang on, it's conceivable that they think I could be the next goose-stepping maniac to come into their neighborhood, I don't know.
He finally realized that a precedent was set back in the 40s by some German guy that might lead people to be a bit concerned about what he was saying.
This goes back to what I said before, though, and I'm sorry that I keep jumping in, but now I'm like really aggravated by this because, again, at this point in your life, Ryan, you said you're in your mid to late 40s. I'm in my early to mid 40s. Trucker Andy, you're in your mid 40s.
Late
mid 40s. If at this point in time in my life I was doing something like this and I hadn't read anything, or I hadn't looked at a bunch of research, even in elementary school through high school through what little college I did, there are other ideas out there that get shown to you, and you have to internalize them and figure them out based on the childhood upbringing as well. Like there are things that are at play here, and I just feel like he's not a very bright guy, because the Jewish population throughout history has been oppressed. I mean, it's not like it's the first time. Like whenever I hear like currently about, you know, Jewish people and Jewish communities being frightened by or the anti-Semitic rhetoric going up, I'm kind of like, well, is that really a thing? Then you really have to think about it and go, how many times have they been displaced?
Yeah. Well,
like all of the time. Like, so
right.
This kind of thing is megalomaniac bullshit is what
that's really what it is, because when you say he's not bright, that I'll say that that can't be true, just based on where he ended up, you know, at the pinnacle of his career. What you can't wrap your head around is approaching this topic from the direction that he's approaching it from. You know, he's like, nobody with any kind of like empathy for what you're saying, like the history of the region, would say this kind of thing. Nobody that ever knew anybody that was in Germany in the 40s would say that the Holocaust never happened. You know, it's an insane way to approach the topic, and it's just people can't relate to that. So it seems like it is ignorant. You know, it's not that he's not bright; he's just ignorant of that experience. So ignorance and stupidity are not really the same thing. I guess that's what I'm getting at. But that's still a valid opinion. Did you have anything to add, Ryan, before we move on?
Well, no, let's move on. I just, yeah.
Well, I mean, a couple more clips left. I know it's a long episode, but
no, it's my fault. Anytime I go on a pod, I drag it out. I apologize. I talk too much. I just stop talking on the podcast.
It's a format about talking. I'd rather you say something than show up and say nothing, so it's fine. But
I'm just a pretty face.
Yeah, I've established the bit about Mel's dad and how Mel's been nurtured and conditioned to think that way. And Diane's going to try and point out to Mel that they had an interview before where she brought this up to him, and maybe, you know, she's trying to like give him, like, let him off the hook a little bit, and he just won't. He can't get out of his own way.
It was an atrocity of monumental proportion.
But when we ask him to repudiate the assertions of his dad...
He's my father. Gotta leave it alone, Diane.
Look at him. You look at him.
I'll leave it alone.
Boy, he's ready to punch her. Like that. Sorry.
His father has been on the record. This is not an assumption. He has been on the record. Mm-hmm. Saying things like the Holocaust, quote, mostly fiction, that it's been hyped out of proportion.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about me here right now, and me taking responsibility for my words and actions. And I'm certainly not going to use him to sort of put anything off of me.
He looks... It gives you a little bit of an indication of that recorded phone call to his busty girlfriend. That sorry, I just love how he threw the fake breasts.
Yeah,
you know, that anger that came out kind of unglued on the phone, and maybe that pullover, the way he's talking to Diane there, the way he looked. If it's performative or it's just Mel, that's what I mean. Like, there's how much of the character of Marty Riggs is Mel or Marty, because he looks really not. I felt almost unsafe watching him there. His eyes, the way they changed. What are your thoughts on the way he looked?
I agree, and you could. It's a place of arrogance, and I can't believe you would say, "How dare you say something like that to me about my dad?" We saw it a little bit with Tom Cruise when that guy from 60 Minutes started bringing up his divorce with Nicole Kidman.
I love that.
You know, when people start pushing him about Scientology and being painted in a negative light, that you know, you could see the guy with the like the happy comedy mask suddenly turns into the tragedy mask, and You could tell that you've crossed a line with these guys, and this whole thing it's giving me a lot of Tom Cruise. It's giving me a lot of Charlie Sheen, among some of the other things that we talked about. And they're just not used to people challenging them on things like that are disagreeable to them. You know, they have personal assistants that do everything they want for them all the time. They have adoring fans that want nothing but hugs and autographs. And then when you start saying, hey, well, you know, maybe your dad wasn't such a great guy. And somebody like Mel Gibson is probably terrified of his dad. And, you know, even there, you know, it's like, okay, no stitches for you, Mel. No, you didn't snitch on your dad. But, you know, it's just, you know, your dad didn't put the tequila bottle in your hand when you got pulled over for a DUI, but maybe he had something to do with what you said to the cop, which was the real problem.
He had the opportunity, not necessarily to throw his dad under the bus, but he could have just said, you know, I can't speak for my dad or his personal beliefs. Obviously, what he says is going to be, you know, it's very inflammatory towards, you know, when people hear that, of course, like, you asking the question, Diane, is already showing me what the world would think of that. Of course, like, what am I going to say? Like, you know what the world would think of that statement. So it goes without saying what that statement does when people hear it. So of course, you know, I think that's what he should have said was like, that's not the thing people want to hear, and maybe they shouldn't hear that. And my dad probably shouldn't say it or keep it to himself, you know, but I'm the celebrity figure. So it's like, don't bring my dad into it because I'm the celebrity. Like, I'm the celebrity. That's why you're having the interview with me. So if you want to interview my father about it, by all means, talk to him. I'm the one that made the statements that I made about the situation. That's probably what he should have said.
Far more even-handed than Mel Gibson was. Wow. But it's like, yes, I can't change that, but, you know, family's family, and I can't change who my dad is.
No, I love my dad. Of course, we all say things, but he's not being interviewed. You'd have to interview him and get his ideas on that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as the interview wraps up, Diane.
Oh, before you wrap up the interview, I want to talk about the Holocaust. This is because it's always so much fun. No, it's interesting. Mel Gibson at the time was actually scheduled to do a Holocaust miniseries. I don't know if you caught that in your research. And it got canceled because of this. Obviously, what happened, but he was actually working on a Holocaust like miniseries for whatever network. And I just think it's funny, had he released, this is the joke, but had he released the miniseries, it would have been one episode. It would have been the soldiers going to the camp. Oh, nothing here. And they would have left.
Yeah. I heard it was called What Holocaust? What are you talking about?
What Holocaust? It's not even the miniseries. It's the mini-series. It's one episode. Anyway, stupid joke. But the reality is he was working on one, but it got canceled.
Yeah. And so Diane wants to know, like, what lesson, what takeaway Mel had for, you know, what can he hand down to us normies about how we can all get along, and one last way to solve these racial tensions, you know, a final solution, if you will.
What's the main thing we all need to do to bridge prejudice, bigotry, intolerance?
Have dinner.
Talk.
That's losing his mind. Yeah, great advice. Just make sure the ham and shrimp are kosher, Mel, when you have the rabbi over for dinner.
Again, I know what he's trying. Mel-splaining the poor guy. I'm like his agent over here trying to Mel-splain things, but he's just saying we should all get along. Yes, that's the whole point. Don't be an a-hole. Break bread with your fellow man instead of shooting at them. Of course, ultimately that is the answer. But how do we get there? I don't know. I'm not schooled enough to know how to solve any issue in this world. I'm sorry, I'm just not. But he's just saying, yes, break bread with your brother. Yes.
Yeah, and that's good advice. But it was just kind of like thrown away instead of saying, well, when you really like sit down and get to know people's experiences and get to know them as people, and then you can relate to them better, and it might change your mind about what you
get to
think.
know them.
And that's really what he's trying to say. But he's just like, you know, have dinner. But we didn't say do it in one word, and that word.
Yeah, I know. 2 words.
Two words
or less. 2 words or less. How do you solve the world's issues? Have dinner. Yeah. But that's why I say he should have said break bread, because I think that's a better way of saying it, because that's what that means, to break bread with somebody.
Yes. Okay. So 10 years go by. He's not even in Hollywood for very much. I think Jodie Foster tried to put him in a movie called The Brown Bunny, which was
The Beaver.
Or The Beaver. Thank you. Brown Bunny is a different one where people fuck on camera for real. So based on Maverick and his relationship with her, she tried to maybe like save his career, and
she directed him.
Nobody was having it. Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. So that's a big. I will say I'm a huge Jodie Foster fan. By the way, I love her.
Okay.
I love her. I think she's great. I think she's an incredible actress, lovely woman. But I've always enjoyed her movies, and I will applaud Jodie. And I know you're about to bring up another clip, but let's not bypass Jodie's attempt, because it's not a great film, but the fact that she did that for Mel is very telling, because Jodie's not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very Hollywood protected. She's a lesbian, and I'm just saying that she's lesbian. She's female. She's no scandals around her. Child actress who's
liberal, right?
She's almost like royalty in Hollywood. So for her to kind of do that for Mel is very, I would say, because I was a Mel fan before this, right? So it was very helpful. It helped me a little bit. It's like, if Jodie can kind of forgive Mel and move forward with him a little bit, as at least in the artist world, that should be telling, because she knows him, but she knows him beyond the dinosaur interview or what we've seen, or like she knows him better than you and I do. So if Jodie kind of says, "Hey, Mel's all right," in my eyes, that should, I think it did help actually. So I know you're saying it might not have helped, but I think it did.
Well, that is a good point based on where we're going to end up. The only thing I will say is that it didn't seem to help. I think it didn't. It showed that people still supported him, and that maybe there was more to the story than what was being spoon-fed to the general public. So I think you're right in that regard. And I think when all this time goes by and we're going to get to these next clips, it supports what you just said, because now 10 years later, Robert Downey Jr. has gone from being a notorious drug fiend and to the highest paid actor in Hollywood. This is 2014, and he's done 3 Marvel movies, and he's got a $50 million price tag. And he remembers when he was a cautionary tale in Hollywood, and someone extended some grace to him. And someone said, maybe this guy isn't a lost cause. Maybe his whole reputation doesn't need to be informed by his struggles and challenges in his personal life. And maybe he can benefit from a second chance. So let's hear clip 1, RDJ's Cactus.
Actually, I asked Mel to present this award to me for a reason, because when I couldn't get sober, he told me not to give up hope, and he urged me to find my faith. Didn't have to be his or anyone else's, as long as it was rooted in forgiveness. And I couldn't get hired, so he cast me in the lead of a movie that was actually developed for him, and he kept a roof over my head, and he kept food on the table. And most importantly, he said that if I accepted responsibility for my wrongdoings, and if I embraced that part of my soul that was ugly, hugging the cactus, he calls it, he said that if I hugged the cactus long enough, I'd become a man of some humility, and that my life would take on a new meaning. And I did, and it worked. All he asked in return was that someday I help the next guy in some small way.
Right. So the Hollywood Boys Club of the rich and famous are going to take care of their own a little bit here. It's like, remember, when I helped you out, maybe somebody owes somebody one. So maybe you could say a few nice words in the last clip here, clip 2.
It's reasonable to assume that at the time he didn't imagine the next guy would be him. Or that someday was tonight. So anyway, on the special occasion, and in light of the recent holidays, including Columbus Day, I humbly ask that you join me, unless you are completely without sin, in which case you picked the wrong industry, in forgiving my friend his trespasses, offering him the same clean slate you have me, and allowing him to continue his great and ongoing contribution to our collective art without shame. He's hugged the cactus long enough.
Well, so there you go.
I've seen that clip a few times, and I will say, like, Robert brings up the point I was sort of making. At what point do we say to the celebrity or to Mel specifically, okay, you've hugged the cat, like you've suffered long, like we, the public, who, you know me, Andy, I've never made any mistakes. So at some point, when do I say enough's enough? Like, it's tricky because I don't want to lose my job. I'm in the military taking care of my family, and heaven forbid I say anything stupid. I'm always trying to be very careful. I never want to get canceled, because canceled for me is losing my job. Mm-hmm. You know, if I spill a military secret, for example, that would obviously get me in a lot of trouble. That would make me lose my job. But if I just say something derogatory, is that enough to fight? Like, it's crazy. You lose your livelihood for stuff, and you just got. I know you got to be careful, and you shouldn't be an a-hole. That's what goes back to that. Don't be an a-hole. But at the same time, when is it enough? 20 years, 30 years, 50? Like, they're never to work again? You can never work again? Never?
Well, that's the thing. I'm sure to this day, the fact is he's back. Yes. You could see him in movies. He did 6 movies in 2022. Right. And he did, a handful here and a handful there. Lethal Weapon 5, like we said, it's in production. There is a Passion of the Christ adjacent project in pre-production. So he's even going back to that well. But you know that there is a large cross-section of the industry that will probably refuse to work with him ever again.
And that's their right. Here's the thing. That's their right as well. Like, what I'll say is that I'm not saying I condone. Of course, I don't condone what he said. That, of course not. Of course. But what yes. And anything we've said is, if it's anything, I'm just being light about it. And I don't mean to be glib about it. As
it probably needs to be said that we don't support Mel Gibson's comments, even though we make jokes about this.
Of course not.
Like I said, he's back. He's working to this day. Maybe he's not in his full powers, but maybe he's taking more roles as a villain than being a white hat. But Hacksaw Ridge won several Oscars in 2000.
It was nominated, I believe, for Best Picture or Best Director. Mm-hmm. So that's very, because that's Hollywood that does that. That's the actual Hollywood that does the nominations for Oscars. So that shows you the indication that he was nominated. I think it was nominated for Best Director himself.
Yeah. So, and that's was 10 years after the incident. So maybe that's the timeline of cancellation.
Yeah, sure. 20 years. I will say, I'll end with this, is that I don't believe in cancellation, but I believe that you don't have to agree. So what he said was terrible, of course. I'm not even talking necessarily about him, but let's just say we had that bakery. I've heard the bakery. We won't make cakes for gay people. Okay. They announced it. They advertised as such, but there was a big, like, shut them down, close them. No. Just don't go there. Mm-hmm. Like, don't burn their business down. Don't hurt these store owners. They just said some words. They made a decree. They decreed, we will not make cakes for people that love the same sex. That's what they were saying. Now, I think it's ridiculous. I would take anyone's money. I don't care who you are. I'll take your money. But the point is, that's their decree. That's their right.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't burn down their shop. We shouldn't kick the crap out of them when they walk out of their shop. Just don't buy cakes there.
Right.
They will learn that by making those decrees, they might lose customers. So if Mel says what he's going to say, or any actor, or Kanye, or whoever, let them announce whatever they're going to announce, but then just don't show up.
Exactly. You don't have to buy a Kanye album. You don't have to go see a Mel Gibson movie, and you don't have to buy a cake from. You don't have to buy a penis-shaped cake.
Because what you're actually kind of saying by what, and this is where it gets a little tricky, because at some point I mean, the universal we're kind of saying that is the thing that we agree with. So it gets tricky, because you're like, you better agree with the royal we, because if you agree with Mel or the cake company, let's say, and their ideals, then you're bad too. And this is where it gets tricky. It's like, oh crap, like, I can't say anything. It was basically what does Hollywood say? Because if Hollywood disagrees with me, then I'm in trouble. It almost feels that way at times with politics. It's like if a celebrity can't express an opinion about something that Hollywood doesn't agree with, then I almost feel like the public is on the same playing field. And I think it gets very dangerous is what I'm getting at. This gets very dangerous when there's a certain group of people, not Hollywood, there's a certain element of public persona that seems to control the narrative of what you're allowed to, and this is where it gets tricky. I don't know, Ed, what do you got to say there, Ed?
What I would say to that is that you have a right to say what you want. And you also have but you do not have a right to not be offended. Okay. Right. So by saying something terrible, I can support you in having your right to say that, but I don't have to agree with it.
Of course.
I think what happens is my right to not be offended is incorrectly applied and supersedes your right to whatever you say or believe. And that's where we're at right now, where there is no forgiveness on either side of that. And like you said, it is extremely dangerous. Just look what's happening in our country. I mean, it's a mess. Because it's a zero-sum policy right now. Yeah. It's a scorched earth zero-sum thing, and it's very scary, and it's not the correct way. Like, if you don't like something, don't subscribe to it. Change the channel.
Right.
Don't get one, whatever. Right. You know what I mean? That's really the answer. Behave.
Right. And I'll add
I want to be clear. No hate speech. No hate speech. I want to be clear about that. Free speech shouldn't be hate speech. That's let's clarify. Well,
that's the other point I was going to make. Even no matter if you're a detractor on an issue or a supporter of an issue, there's often a problem. I mean, there is a problem in this country, especially on social media, for a lot of issues where a vocal minority is perceived as the majority's opinion, just because this minority opinion is posting over and over and over and over again about supporting something or being against something. And then just because the majority of people don't go out of their way to put their opinions online, you see these minority vocal opinions all over the place, and you start to think that that's the way the majority of people think, and it's not. So being cognizant of that, especially online, is important. And I think we're still trying to navigate that. And that doesn't really have anything to do with the Mel Gibson thing. It has more to do with what we're just talking about cancellation and and just how letting yourself be, letting the narrative being spoon-fed to you affect you, and how to maybe combat that in 2024. So but that's a topic for a different day. What the topic of the day is whether or not we accept or reject Mel Gibson's opinion. Right? We didn't know that we knew we were going to have to get here, but I'm still unclear. My wife knows this. For a long time, I would just not watch anything that Mel Gibson.
No, you really made that. You made it. That's good. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
And I like I said, I've sort of grown tired of holding myself to that. And like I said, he's back in Hollywood, and I've watched a few things that he's returned in. But I don't enjoy the guy the way that I used. He doesn't make my heart happy the way he used to when he was.
Of course, it's stained. There's a stain. You know? There's a stain there, right? You know, you could say it like stupid metaphor, but yeah, there was blood on the sheets. It's gross. It's ugly. You put it through the wash. It doesn't smell anymore. It's dry. It doesn't smell, but still in that sheet is the stain. There's the reminder that something happened here.
But you don't throw the bed out.
No, you keep the sheet. Yeah, look, I'm poor. I got to keep the sheet. I don't care. But the point is like, yeah, there is a stain. I admit, of course there is, and a lot there. He's not the only one. We live as long as we have. There's been many of the celebrities that I've enjoyed throughout my life where their politics I don't agree with, or they've made choices that I don't agree with, or you could be, let's say you're anti-abortion, let's just say, but then a celebrity has had 3 of them. You're like, oh my gosh, whatever it might be, there could be things in people's lives that they do where the public disagrees with, where you personally disagree with, but it's allowed by the public, or vice versa. Like, it's tricky. So you have to decide for yourself as a person who consumes popular culture, hey, at what point do I personally lift the cancellation? At what point do I enjoy, and maybe you never do again. Maybe they're like, do people listen to R. Kelly? I don't know. I don't know. But the point is that at some point you kind of have to go, I don't know. I think with Mel, I don't know, is there music for this, or do you have some sort of bed for this?
I told you I lost my drop board. Maybe I'll throw it in post.
I sent you 2 story videos. Remember those?
Yeah.
Remember the songs? I have them ready to go.
Oh, great. We can use that then.
Well, I got the wrong button. Which how
I will
does this
say,
work?
My verdict, you say that you have to make up your own mind. So I'm going to decide that if it's good enough for Robert Downey Jr., it's good enough for me. And I guess I will accept Mel Gibson's apology 15 years after the fact.
Okay, well, I've got the 2 clips. They're both songs. One's from REM, so I think this might count for yours. Here we go.
Sorry, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry, I'm so sorry, so sorry, so sorry.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you for saving the ending of the show with that.
And I will also, and I got one more. This is from, and you probably heard, this is from Aerosmith, this next song clip. They just announced their retirement. I don't know if you caught that news. Yeah, I'm a huge Aerosmith fan. I've been a fan since I was a kid, so 4+ decades of listening to their music. We all have to get older. I also will accept Mel's apology. I've also watched movies since then. I will recommend, if you haven't seen this movie, this is a plug for one of his movies, incredible film called Drag Across Concrete. Came out in 2018. It's an excellent film. But that being said, I do accept his apologies. I don't think I've seen anything the last 15 years or 18 years or whatever that has indicated, at least publicly, because we're punishing him via the public medium, right? So I haven't seen anything publicly. What he holds personally, it's none of my business. I haven't seen anything publicly that has shown that he's still at it. Have you? I don't know if I'm seeing or hearing about that. Another DUI.
He's just probably gotten better.
And he's gotten older. As we get older, we get softer as we get older. So I will accept his apology, and here's the... All right.
Well, I have to thank you again, Ryan, for taking time out of your busy schedule. You do a lot of podcasting. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you and what you're up to?
Yeah, again, just the show that I do with a variety of different hosts or different topics. I do a Rambo podcast and a Rocky podcast. Just Google Rambo series podcast or Rocky series podcast if you're interested in those films. It's very niche, I understand that. But the one that's not so much is the worst of the best podcast, because we have a variety of different topics every episode. And my brother and I, much like your guys' show, we do the most of those shows together. We just take an album, artist, actor, conspiracy theories. We have a simulation episode, for example, where we talk about a list of things that are the best of, and then we pick from that list, independent of each other, what we think is the worst thing of that. So again, for our Clutch episode for the band Clutch, Andy and I picked the worst song from Blast Tyrant, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a great time, and you can find that on our feed currently. So please check that out. And I'd like to encourage everybody to please follow us on Instagram. That's more of like a companion to the show, a little more apologies. If you like seeing the apology tours, that's all over our Instagram feed. And I want to beg the people that are downloading this show to share it with a friend, because I think that's the way to grow a show organically. And I want people to get their ears on this. So please rate and review the podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, and consider supporting the show financially at patreon.com/allapologiespodcast. And once again, Ryan, thanks so much for being here. I forget how I wrap this up. Without Joe, I'm lost without Joe. But I know that it always ends with stay sorry.